Okay, let's begin stitching. So to start, I like to do all the florals first because when we stitch in the cactus, we want to be able to work around wherever our florals end up since they kind of meld onto the top of the cactus. So yeah, we're gonna start with our florals. You're gonna grab just 3 strands of 3064 to start, and we're gonna do each of the little woven wheel roses. So I'll show you how to do one of them, and then you'll do the same thing for all of them. So actually, you're gonna do, scratch that, I can't talk. Start with 3 strands, 3064, let's go. Okay, so you're gonna start by just doing the spokes of each wheel. And you wanna do that on all of them while you have your 3 strands in your needle. It'll just be easier. It'll be less switching around of strands and such. So I'm doing little straight stitches here, working from the outer edge of the woven, of the circle towards the center each time. So once I complete this one, I'm going to repeat for my other ones, all in the whole pattern. So I'll do that again. I'll do that for this one, and this one over here. Okay, now that we did that, you're gonna stick with 3064, but you're gonna switch to all 6 strands. So if you need to switch to your needle with a little bit of a larger eye, you can do that. If you can get it through your medium-sized needle, then do that. So to fill in a woven wheel, I'll zoom in a little bit here. We're going to be weaving over and under every spoke. So I'm going to come up in between 2 of the spokes as close to the center as I can and pull up through. Okay, pull, there we go. And since I am going to go over this spoke, I'm going to put my needle under the following spoke and pull it through. So since I went under this one, I will go over this one and go under the following one. It's a little hard for me to show you when I'm not able to move my hoop. When you're doing it, you can twist your hoop around and that makes it a bit easier. So I'm going over this one, under this one. And a little trick that I like to do is I like to take my non-stitching hand and press up from underneath the fabric so that I can kind of angle my needle nice underneath that stitch and it doesn't go down. I can kind of push up so that the needle has something to push against. And I will pull that through. You can pull, you know, somewhat tight. You don't want to pull too tight when you pull through every time, but you can pull pretty tight. So I'll go over this one, under this one. Over this one, under this one. It's an under-over motion every time. I'm going to go over this one, under this one. Again, this is so much easier if you are able to turn your hoop while you're working. So I don't recommend doing woven wheel on a stand. See, I'm getting stuck in my sticking stitch paper there a little bit. So let me just see if I can turn this. That way I can angle it better. There we go. Okay. So I'll pull that through. And you're going to continue doing this until you have the circle all the way filled in. Then I'll show you one more little thing you can do if you have anything that still needs a little bit of shaping once you've got it filled in. So hold on one second. So as you can see, I've got this flower pretty nice and filled in now, but if it's getting hard to kind of go under the spokes, you can't see them anymore, and you just want to fill the flower out a little bit more, you can go ahead and just make a down stitch, like so. And then you can pull a couple of little straight stitches. So I'm going to come up like a stitch length away here and do a little back stitch down to where I just made my last down stitch, and I can do that just kind of all the way around the flower. Or I'm feeling pretty good about this one. I don't think I need to fill in too much more. I might just do one more over here. Just kind of angle your needle towards the interior of the flower. And that can just help fill it out a little bit more. Or if you have like one spoke that's sticking out a little bit, that's a good way to cover it up. So you're going to repeat that for every other woven wheel rose that's in our pattern, and then we will move on. All right, we're gonna do all the pointed leaves now. I grabbed 3 strands of the dark green 935. I'm gonna show you on one of these leaves up here, just so it's gonna be easier for you to see, but this is gonna be the same for all of the pointed leaves. So that's gonna be this one, these two, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and these two over here. So let me show you on this little guy right here. I am starting by coming up through the fabric at the very point or tip of the leaf. Let's zoom that in. Okay, so I pulled all the way through, 3 strands, 935. I'm gonna make my down stitch right down the center imaginary line of this leaf and about halfway down. If you're curious, this is called the satin leaf stitch. It might have other names, but that's what I call it. Simple leaf, satin leaf stitch. So now that I made that down stitch, I'm gonna come back up. I'm gonna pick a side. I'm starting with this side underneath. And I'm following the line of the leaf. So I'm coming up a little bit below and next to the tip of the leaf. And I will make my down stitch just below my previous down stitch in the center line of the leaf. Make sure you guys can see it. The lighting is getting a little bit sassy with me. Seems a bit better. This afternoon lighting is just always shifting and up in here. Okay. So I went back down that center line. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but on the other side. So now I'm coming up a little bit below and underneath the tip, following the line of the leaf, and I'll make my down stitch just below my previous down stitch in the center of the leaf. And I will repeat that, but now on the other side. Coming up lower every time and following the line, the outer edge of the leaf, to know where to come up from. Y'all, this lighting is being ridiculous right now, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Once you can no longer go down below your previous stitch every time, just stitch into my flower, that's okay. You can just make your down stitch as close to that point as you can. So I'll just come down right here. I'm going to repeat over here. And I'll do one more. Okay. All right, so I have this one leaf all the way done. So I'm going to repeat that stitch for every other pointed leaf that you see in the pattern. Once you finish that, we will move on. All right, I finished all the leaves. Now we're going to do these little kind of more vine-like leaves with the rounded leaves. So for that, we're going to use just 2 strands of 501. And I will show you, let's see, let's go over here so it's nice and bright and you can see. I'll show you this one over here and then you can complete the rest of them the same way. Okay, so to start, we're going to do the line, the stem coming down the middle. That's going to be an outline or a stem stitch. So for that one, I'm going to come up at the end of the line here, or the beginning of the line, I should say. And I'm going to make a down stitch about a stitch length away. But before pulling all the way through, I'm going to hold this out to the side. Pick a side. You can either hold it out on top or on bottom, to the right or to the left, however you want to think of it. But just make sure you're doing it the same to the same side every time. So then I'm going to bring my needle back up on the inside of that stitch. I like to come up about midway through, and then I'm going to pull in the direction of the line that I'm stitching, like so. I will make a down stitch a stitch length away, leave it out to the side. I'm always leaving mine out to the left of the line. Come back up about halfway through and pull. Make a down stitch a stitch length away. Come back up about midway through and pull. I'm going to repeat that all the way down this line. As it curves, you just kind of follow the line. You can make your stitch lengths a little bit shorter if it's a bigger curve, but these are not super curved lines. When you come to the end, you're going to get just about all the way to the end here, like that, and then you can just make a down stitch right after your stitch ends. So I'll just go down right there. So that completes the center stem of our little leaf vines. To do the leaves coming off of this, we're going to do a simple lazy daisy stitch. So for lazy daisy, you're going to come up through the fabric at the base of the leaf shape, still sticking with 2 strands of 501 here. So I come up through the fabric at the base, go back down through that exact same hole that you just came up through, but don't pull all the way through. You're going to leave a loop out, kind of leave it around the loop that we're trying to complete, and you're going to come back up at the tip of the little oval shape. So I'm coming up right at the tip of that shape on the inside of my loop here. And now I am pulling just until I get the shape that I want. So I like right about there. If I pull super, super tight, this will just look more like a straight line. I want there to be a little bit of a looped shape. So to anchor that down, I'm going to make my down stitch just on the other side of my loop. So right now I'm on the inside of the loop, I'm going to make my down stitch on the other side. And that will hold it into place for me. So if you need to run that back to see how to do that again, you can repeat and rewatch that, but you'll just repeat that for every little leaf shape. Once you finish one vine, you can go to the next one and do the outline stem stitch down the middle and do your lazy daisies to complete the leaves. So you'll do that here, 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 and here, and then we will move on. All right, so once you have all the vines done, we're gonna grab 3 strands of the off-white ecru color, and we're gonna fill in the petals of these kind of like daisy-like flowers. So I'll show you right here. The first thing we're gonna do is the petal shapes. So that's just gonna be another lazy daisy stitch. Lazy daisy on our little daisies. I don't know, these flowers are all just kind of whimsical, but kind of like a daisy. So you'll fill this in with lazy daisy the same way that we did with our other little leaves. I'm just gonna pull nice and loose here though. I'm not pulling too tight so that I really get that nice oval shape. And then anchoring it down, because we are gonna actually fill this space in with another color. So go ahead and do all of the leaves first. So we'll do these ones. You'll come up here and do these ones. There's like 4 right here. And then you'll do these ones over here. Okay, once you've got all your petals filled in, you're gonna grab 3 strands of 780, the kind of burnt orange, golden, caramelly color. And we're actually gonna do 2 things with this. The first thing we're gonna do, well, we're gonna do a few different things. We're gonna fill in a little straight stitch on the inside of each petal. So I'm coming up on the inside of the petal shape of this flower, and I'll make my down stitch just towards the center, but still on the inside of the petal. This is a fun way to fill in your lazy daisy stitches. You could do the same color or a different color. So this is just going to help give a little pop of color here. So you'd also repeat that for the other two petals on here. You're also going to do a French knot in the middle of the flower. I'm going to do a 3-wrap French knot because I do want it to stand out. So for a French knot, if you've never done one, I'm going to do a little bit of a quick tutorial right here, but I'll give a better one when we move up to these pink flowers. So you're going to hold your needle you're going to come up through the fabric right about where you want to make your knot, hold your needle horizontally, and you're going to wrap the thread around it 3 times, in this case 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold it loose enough so that I can angle my needle back down towards the fabric, and I want to go down right next to where I came up, not down through the same hole but right next to that hole. So now I'm going to push my needle straight down, but I'm pulling with my non-stitching hand. I'm pulling this thread tight now so that my knot stays in place, and I am pushing that needle straight down through the knot. I'm still holding tight with my non-stitching hand. Now I will let go, and I have a nice little knot right there. So make sure you get every little petal filled in and your French knot. Before you move on to the other ones, we're also going to use 780 to fill in the branches of these little, what are going to be pink florals. So for that, I'm just using a back stitch. So I'm going to come up through the fabric first and make a little straight stitch. And then for every other stitch, I'm going to come up a stitch length away from my previous stitch and go back down through the same hole of my previous stitch. Come up a stitch length away. I'm just going to go straight up this stem first. And then for all these kind of like offshoot branches, I'm just going to do little straight stitches towards the center stem. So I have one right here, one right here, one right here, and one over here. So those are all the things that we're doing with the color 780 and 3 strands right now. We're doing these little branches, we're doing a straight stitch on the inside of each white petal, and a 3-wrap French knot at the center of each of our white flowers. So you'll want to get that done for this branch, this flower, this branch, and this flower, and then we'll just add the little pink florals in a minute. Okay, we're almost done with our flowers here. I've got everything filled in except for the pink florals. For this, you're going to use 3 strands of 600, and we're going to just do a bunch of tiny little 1-wrap French knots. This is kind of embroiderer's choice, so you can fill in as many or as little as you want. I like the ends of these branches to just be full with them. So I like to kind of go over the branches, especially these offshoot ones, and just get it really nice and full of little pink 1-wrap French knots. So the only difference for a 1-wrap French knot is you're just going to wrap the thread around 1 time versus the 3 that we just did. So I'll show you one real quick right here. Come up through the fabric. I'm holding my needle horizontally, wrapping around it 1 time, loosening up so I can go back down next to where I came up, pulling tight with my non-stitching hand, and I'm going to push that needle straight down through, and I will only let go when I'm close So I'm going to fill in a bunch of these. Meet back with you in just a minute. Okay, just wanted to show you the one I have completed here. So you can see that's about as full as I like to make mine, but you're welcome to make yours more full or less full. So you would repeat for this one, and this one, and then we'll be done with the florals. I do like to add the beads later on in the project just so they're not really in my way. So we'll do that later. We're going to move on after the florals to the windows and the door on the interior of the cactus. All right, we're going to move on to the outline of each window. For that, you're going to want to grab 3 strands of the ecru, the off-white color, and we're going to start by just doing the outline lines of the windows, so leave those middle bars unstitched right now. We're actually going to fill those in later. So for this, I'm just going to do a back stitch. So for back stitch, again, you're just going to make a little straight stitch to start. And then you will work your way all the way around by coming up a stitch length away and going back down the same hole from your previous stitch. So again, I'm using 3 strands of ecru here, and I will outline all of the windows in the pattern. When you work around curves with backstitch, you just want to make your stitch lengths nice and short. Okay, so continue doing that and complete all of the windows. All right, I filled out the exterior lines of all the windows. Now I have 3 strands of 38/28, and I'm just going to vertically satin stitch in these windows. So to start, I like to just make one little tiny stitch in the middle of the window. This is going to get completely stitched over, but it helps so that you don't have a knot that you're stitching into. So with this window, I'm going to start right in the middle, and I want to come up on the inside of my window lines, and I'll pull my stitch all the way down, straight down. It doesn't matter that you're covering up those lines because those we're just going to do a stitch over our satin stitch in a minute. So then I'll come up next to this stitch and go back down next to my down stitch. As I work towards the exterior here, eventually my stitch lengths will just get shorter to match the shape of the window. So now I'm just going to follow the shape of the window, so I'll come up right here and go back down right here. Now I'll come up below right here and go back down right here. So this is satin stitch, where it's a great filler stitch. You're going to get quite familiar with satin stitch in this project, as the whole cactus is satin stitched in. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. All right, so I did this half, so I'll do the same thing on this half, and you're going to fill in all the windows that way. So I fill in this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one over here. The last thing we'll do here is fill in the little crossbars on the windows. So for that, I'm just using 2 strands of 501, and you'll just simply stitch over your satin stitch with a little straight stitch. So you can use your thread to pull across so that you get a nice straight line, and then make your down stitch. That was a little wonky, but that's okay. And then I'll pull this one up. It's always a little hard to see through where I'm filming here. It's in my way. So I'm going to repeat that on all the other windows. So for each one we do a bar across and also one straight up and down. Just want to make sure you kind of come up on the interior of your white stitches, not the exterior of them. For this one, I like to do 2 bars going across, kind of cutting it towards the bottom here. One right here towards the top third. And then one going all the way down the middle. So you can see I'm using my thread to guide me as where to make my down stitch. And then you'll finish off with this one going across down the middle and then down the middle and across. Okay, we're gonna do the door now. So you're gonna grab all 6 strands of 780 for this, and we're gonna start with the outline of the door here. Move this for you a little bit so you can see. So I'm going to start on the interior line. So I'll follow, you can see there's kind of this double arc here over the door. So I'm going to start on the interior one, and we're just going to back stitch all the way around, keeping your stitch lengths nice and short. So go ahead and do that all the way around the door. We've done back stitch a couple times now, so if you need to watch back how to do it, feel free to look back. But remember, after your initial straight stitch, you're just going to come up a stitch length away every time, and you'll go back down through the hole that you just previously made. Now that I've gone all the way around once, I'm going to just do that again, but on the outside of the line that I just made. So basically we're kind of filling in this sort of arc shape. If you don't fill it in all the way completely, that's fine. But we're just going to do 2 full sort of rows around with this back stitch in 780. Just makes the door stand out a little bit more. Looks really cool. So go ahead and go all the way back around the line that we just stitched with another back stitch here, and then we'll do the interior of the door. Next, you're going to satin stitch in this door. So for that, I am using 3 strands of the ecru color, and I'm actually going to go back here. I like to start again with just a little straight stitch somewhere in the middle of this. That's going to get covered up so that I'm not stitching into my knot. Okay, so I usually start in the middle when I'm doing something like this, filling a shape, and use my thread to guide me up to the top. And then I'll just fill in on both sides of that middle stitch. So I'll come up right next to that one. And make my down stitch right next to the one on the top. With these long sort of pulls across, sometimes you'll see a little bit of space between your strands. Sometimes that will kind of naturally come together as you stitch a little bit more, but if it doesn't, you can always go back, and I could fill in like another little stitch right here to tighten these up a little bit. So again, with satin stitch, make sure you're always coming up from the same side every time. Just tends to make things easier and neater that way. So you'll fill in the entire interior of the door with 3 strands of ecru. Okay, I have that all filled in. So now I'm going to take 3 strands of 501 and come up right in the middle of your door or wherever you want the little doorknob to be. Try to come in through the middle of some stitches. And you can do either a 2 wrap, 1 wrap, 2 wrap, 3 wrap French knot. I'm going to do a 2 wrap one, just depends how big you want your doorknob. And pull that right through the middle. All right, so our door is done. Okay, so now we're going to start satin stitching in the whole body of the cactus. And this part is very time consuming, but I just love the way that it ends up making like the ribbed little sections look so unique and textured and nice. So just settle in and take breaks if you need to, and that's my best advice. So you can really start wherever you want to. I'm gonna start over here with this left arm, and I'm using 4 strands of our color 3022 here. So what I like to do is, again, I always just like to start with like a little straight stitch that's going to get covered up in the middle. And I like to create some guidelines, especially for these sections that are curving a lot. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to pull my thread straight down and make a little down stitch. And I'm gonna make some guidelines, so I'm gonna skip a little bit of space and go right here. Make a little stitch across. And what this does is it helps you with direction. Go right here, pull across. Because if we make our sections a little bit smaller, it just kind of helps us to keep the proper direction of our stitches and work in between these smaller sections rather than thinking of it like one long, huge thing. So then once you've made some guidelines, and you could also go down here and make these guidelines, we'll go ahead and just fill in. So now I'm going to start filling in up to the top here. Whoops. And we are not going for perfection here, and if your lines don't perfectly line up every time, I mean, that's just like next to impossible with how much little tiny satin stitches we're gonna do here. So just get it as good as you can. It's okay if it just kind of blends and some lines are a little bit longer than other lines. But you are going to stitch each of these sections individually. So you can see I'm just working my way up towards the top here. My cats are meowing. So I filled in all the way to the top there, so now I'm just going to continue working my way back down, like so. So as you can see, this is going to be, like I said, quite time consuming, but I do actually find it quite peaceful. And it's great practice for satin stitch, especially with these smaller sections. I think people get intimidated by satin stitch, and when it's in tiny little sections like this, it can seem quite tricky, which it can be. But you get a lot of practice here, and it's so, satin stitch can be so versatile when you can start using it in smaller sections rather than just as a large filler stitch. you can just get really nice textures and go different directions and achieve nice effects with it. So hopefully you can find something about stitching this whole long cactus part that brings you some peace, some mindfulness, some joy. And if you're like, no, then you can always take breaks and move on to other parts of you could skip ahead and work on the birds or the ground of this pattern, come back. I like to take little breaks from this for sure. So you're just gonna keep working like that. Okay, so I've completed one little section, so now I'm going to do the same thing with this section, working in the same direction. So with these stitches, we're mostly working vertically and then kind of angling diagonally here and then more horizontal as you go up the arm of the cactus. So again, it can be helpful to make yourself some little sections depending on your comfort level with satin stitch. And just use your thread. Essentially, I want all my threads to be matching the direction of the stitches below them that we already did. Oops, sorry. So I'm pulling that the same direction and then making my down stitch. Go a little bit up here. And now I will go ahead and fill in between all my sections. Again, there's no right or wrong way to fill, just wherever you kind of feel like starting and stopping. And just aim for getting it done. Try not to aim for perfection, or else you could be here for a long, long while. I'm just kidding. I understand aiming for perfection. I tend to do that. But there's something about this that just kind of just go for it. Obviously, when you cut to the window, you want to stop stitching once you've reached it. And then you can pick your stitches back up on the top of the window here. There's some areas that get really, really small, kind of like right here. You just do your best to just fill in those tiny little spaces as best you can. So I'm gonna hop off here and I'm not gonna come back on until I've finished stitching in this whole cactus. Just to let you know how to make your guidelines here. When you're doing this middle section of the cactus, all of your lines are gonna go horizontally across. So you'll fill in each section with tiny little horizontal stitches. And then when you come over here to this arm, you'll do it kind of like this one. So they'll be vertical, diagonal, and then more horizontal as they go up to the top of the cactus arm. So please let me know if you ever have questions about how to fill in this cactus. And of course, if you don't like satin stitch, you could always do like a back split stitch to fill in the whole body of the cactus. And it just won't look quite as sectioned off like this. It'll just be more of a blank fill. Or you could do a satin stitch but without the section, so you could just stitch all the way across. So those are some other options if this gets too tedious for you. There's definitely other ways we could fill it. You could even use a chain stitch here, which would create some nice texture. So do what feels best for you, And when you're finished filling in the cactus, we'll move on to the sign. All right, if you've made it to this point in the video, congratulations. I am sorry for putting you through all of this satin stitch. Your fingers might be hurting a little bit, but I mean, look at what a cute little cactus we have now. It's just, oh, it can't be beat. Okay, so your efforts were worth it. We're closing in on being done. We have a few more things to add. So we're gonna start by outlining our cactus. So with this, I am using the Grande, the big shiny diamond floss. It's G225. If you have the kit, this will come in the kit, but if you're doing it from home, that's what the color is. So we're just gonna backstitch all the way around the outline of the cactus here. And this just helps give a little bit of contrast. I love the shiny floss. So I'm just going right where my stitches end, and I will literally backstitch around this entire cactus shape. So whenever you run out of thread, just tie off in the back and get more and continue on. Make sure you go all the way around the cactus, so make sure you come up around here, go up to here, come back down here. You're gonna go all the way up here, back down here, all the way over here, back down here, and all the way back down to the bottom. If you want to do across the bottom here, you can. I just like to leave that kind of open, but that's embroiderer's choice. So do what you would like to do. So meet me back when you're done with that step, and then we will move on. Okay, we're gonna move on to the little Casa Cactus sign. You're gonna start with 2 strands of the dark brown 9 color, 09, and you'll just do a straight stitch for each of these little like strings connecting down to the sign. So I'll do one right here. And one right here. Easy peasy. Save those 2 strands because we only used a little bit. We're going to be using 2 strands of this color for a lot of other things, so you can kind of set that to the side and just save it for later. Okay, next we're going to do the lettering. So I'm going to get 2 strands of the dark green 935, and we're just going to backstitch this lettering in. The key to this is using a very small number of strands. We're only using 2, and making your stitch lengths as short as you possibly can to navigate all the little curves, especially in the C's, which there are 3 of, and the S. The all straight letters make it a little bit easier. Because there's just not as many curves, but the shorter you can keep your stitch lengths, the more legible your lettering will be. I'm going to try to get 2 more right here, so you can see how I'm just working my way around this C nice and slow. Do one more little tiny one right here. Okay, then I'll move on to the A. I'm still going to make my stitch lengths really short rather than just pulling straight up the side, but if you wanted to just do a straight stitch there, you could. But I like to kind of all have my stitch lengths short and uniform So anyways, you're just going to continue like this until you get all of the letters stitched over, and then we'll do the outline of the sign. So once you're done with that, you can continue on with the video and we will keep moving, keep stitching, just keep stitching. That should be the motto for this hoop, just keep stitching. Well, that one got a little funky, but that's okay. It's whimsical. Okay, I finished the lettering, so now we're going to grab all 6 strands of ecru and we're going to start on the innermost line. So there's kind of the 2 lines here. You want to start on the inner one, and we're going to go all the way around just with a back stitch. So keep your stitch lengths, again, pretty small because we're kind of curving the whole time here. Once you get all the way around, we're going to do this again with 2 more colors, working our way out. So meet me back when you're done with this color. Now you're going to do the same thing, but with 780. So you're going to go all the way around, just right where your last stitches ended. And backstitch around that. So go ahead and do that. Finally, you're going to do the same thing one more time with 6 strands of 501. So just pick a spot to start and backstitch all the way around the edge. If there's still a little bit of the ink showing, if you did stick and stitch, that's totally fine. It's just kind of like a rough estimate. Or if you have any pen marks still showing, you can just use a blow dryer to erase them if it's not quite white enough. Or if you wanted to add another color to go around this one, you could. So I'll leave that up to you, and we will move on to the birds after this. Okay, we're gonna work on our birds now. So we're gonna start with their little beaks, the little triangular shape of the beaks. And all the birds, including this one down here below, are much the same. So I grabbed 2 strands of 780, and for the beak, you're just going to satin stitch this in. I'm just starting at the tip of the beak here. And then I'm just going to do a couple more little stitches. Kind of satin stitch or just a couple of straight stitches sort of to fill in that tiny space. So I'm just making them a little bit shorter and below. So something just about like that. And I like to do all the birds at once while I have the colors threaded. So I'm going to do this beak, and if I still have enough thread, I'll swing down here and do this beak. Or if not, you can grab some more thread and do the beak down here. And then we'll move on to the next step of the birds. Next, you're going to grab 2 strands of ecru, and we're going to do a long and short stitch for the main body, upper body part of these birds. And then for this little guy, we'll do his body right here in this method. So we're going to do a long and short stitch here. So with that, you're basically just kind of filling in with a series of stitches that are sort of staggered. So you can kind of go any direction you want. So I'm going to make this stitch a little bit longer than that one. And this one a little bit longer. You can go ahead and stitch over that little dot for the eye because we'll put that in over our long and short stitches. I'll do one coming up this way. It's kind of like coloring. Instead of satin stitch where we're like pulling across the same length every time, I'm just staggering the lengths of my stitches. Gives it a more textured look like the feathers would be on a bird. And you can kind of work your stitches into each other. That'll give it a nice textured look rather than just being all one way like satin stitch. Long and short, to be honest, isn't a stitch I have done too much. So I'm trying to incorporate it more because it actually works really great as a filler stitch. But it's not as structured. There's a little more freedom to it. So kind of have to decide yourself what kind of direction to put your stitches and where to stop and start. But the nice thing is there's really no wrong or right way to do it. You just want to get all the space filled in. So I'm going to fill in this whole body of the bird. You can just kind of keep watching for a little bit to get an idea, a feel for how I'm doing it. And then you will repeat for the other birds. So once I finish this one, I will also do this part of this one and then the whole body of this one. When I get to this one, I like to work my long and short stitches going down a little bit more, up and down ways. So get all that done and then we'll continue. All right, next you're gonna grab 3 strands of 3064 and we're going to back stitch in the lower body half of each bird and we'll do it on the wing of this bird. So 3 strands, 3064, and I'm just gonna use back stitch as a filler stitch. So for this shape, the way I like to do that is just work around the outline first and then fill, working my way in. So I'll do one little line going all the way around the outline. Like so. And then I will repeat that, working my way in each time until I get this all filled in. But really any way, any direction that you want to go is going to be fine. I just like the look of the back stitch. It's different texture, different color than our top half of the bird, so it's a nice contrast. And different stitch type. So again, you're going to do that for, on these flying birds up here, the lower half. And then on our little bird down here, you will fill in its wing. So I usually work around like this and then fill in towards the middle. Okay, next we'll do the little tail kind of feather things. So for that, I'm grabbing 3 strands of 600 and I'm just going to do a little lazy daisy stitch for each section. So the same way that we did it for the flowers, you're going to come up through the fabric, go back down the same hole. I'm running into my knot here, so I'm going to angle it a little bit. There we go. Hold your thread out around the loop, come up at the tip of the shape, pull, until you achieve the shape that you want, and then anchor it down by making a down stitch just on the other side. Voila! Oh, that one got a little twisted. There we go. All right, so I'll do a shorter one in the middle and then a longer one, and you'll do the same thing for this bird, and then you'll do the same thing for the 3 little tail feather things down here. The last thing we're going to do is the eyes and the little feet of the birds. So for that, I'm using 2 strands of our dark brown 9 color. And for the feet, we're just going to do some straight stitches. So I'll do one long one down the center. And then I'll do a couple short ones going diagonally up towards that middle stitch that we just made. So this will be the same technique on all 3 birds. Then in the center of the sort of upper body here, you're going to come up through the fabric. You're going to come up through the fabric, just about kind of towards the beak, but not right in the middle, right where the eye would be. And I like to do a 2-wrap French knot right through our stitches. Okay, that makes it so much clearer that it's a bird. And so you'll repeat on this bird. When you come to this bird down here, you'll do the feet the same way. Just put the eye, I like to put the eye just right here in this little dot. You could do a 2 or a 3-wrap French knot here. Okay, we're gonna do this little flag bunting garland that the birds are holding up now. So with 2 strands of 9, we're just gonna do a back stitch across first. And then we'll fill in each of the little triangular flag shapes. You could also do a back split stitch here. You could do an outline stitch, which is what we're gonna do on the garland below. I'm just keeping it nice and simple and doing a back stitch. So go all the way across with that. Okay, for each of the little flag buntings, honestly, I want you to feel free to use whatever colors you want here. If a certain color pattern speaks to you, then go ahead and do that. I just ended up using a different one for each little flag. So I started with 38, I'm starting with 3 strands of 38-28 right here. And I like to go across with my satin stitch and just make my stitches smaller each time to get this sort of pointed triangular shape. I'm doing a few across here. I'm actually going to go up here and make this one a little bit longer, just so it's nice and wide at the top. There we go. Make this one a little bit longer as well. Sometimes it's kind of nice to do a couple repetitive stitches. Also, it just helps to sort of pad up your satin stitch so it stands out a little bit more, which is helpful in such a tiny shape. So as I get down here to the bottom, I'm just making sure that my stitches are getting very short in length. So we're gonna come almost to a point. You can see I'm starting to get that shape. I might just do one more little tiny baby stitch right here. Almost coming down the same hole I just went up through. So there I have a triangular shape, and I'm going to continue with some different colors. Now I'm going to do 3 strands of 30-64 for this flag. I'm doing this next flag right here with 3 strands of 501. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here, but with 3 strands of 780. And then for the last flag, we're going to use 3 strands of 935. But again, feel free to change up the colors however you'd like. Once you're done with all of those, we'll move down here and do the little string of lights, and then we'll do the stones around the bottom, and then we'll talk about adding the beads. Okay, moving on down here to our little string of little twinkle lights, which we have to have in almost every pattern that I do. We are going to use 2 strands of 9, and we're going to do an outline or a stem stitch, which we did earlier down the middle of those little flowers right there. So you're just going to begin to make a straight stitch, but before pulling through all the way, you'll come up about 2/3, half of the way in between, and pull. Go out a stitch length away, leave your thread out to the same side every time, come up about 2/3 of the way back, and pull in the direction of the line that you're stitching. So you'll do that all the way across, and then we will fill in the lights. Okay, for each little light on this string of lights, we're going to use 3 strands of 38/28, and I'll just show you this one right here so you can easily see it. I'm coming up just a little bit to the center of the dot. I'm going to do a 2 wrap French knot, so 1, 2, and then go back down right about in the center of the dot. And I will repeat that for each little dot along the garland here. So go ahead and finish that, and then we just need to move on to stitching these stones down here. Okay, the last sort of thing that we need to really stitch here is going to be all of these little stones. And then where the dots are, we'll add in beads, and we'll also talk about adding in the beads to fill out the florals on the top of the cactus. So for these little stones, you're going to keep it pretty simple. 3 strands of 9, and we're just going to satin stitch these in. So you can kind of choose any direction that you want to, and you can change it up for each stone. But I generally like to just kind of start in the middle of one and then fill in on both sides of that. Sorry, I want to get you a better view. Okay, and fill in on both sides of that as I'm working. My satin stitch. So I'm working at a little bit of a diagonal for this one. And you don't have to get the shapes exactly perfect like they're drawn. You can just kind of fill them in as best as you can. So just continue doing that until you get every little rock or stone filled in, and then we get to move on to adding all of our pretty beads. Almost got this one done here. And voila! Got one little stone filled in. I'm going to do the rest of them, and I'll meet you back and we'll move on. Okay, we're going to start with some bead work now, and we're going to start with the little sparkle beads that are going to be at the bottom of the hoop here. So you're going to want to pour your beads into some kind of shallow dish. It could be like a little bowl, a paper plate, a regular plate, a little trinket dish, or a little plastic bottle cap even, something like that, that you can just readily get to them with. And then these are the beads that I used on the bottom here. These are size 12-0 antique brass beads, but you could obviously use any colors you'd like if you didn't get the kit. If you get the kit, this obviously will come with it. These are from Hobby Lobby though, if you are just doing the pattern and want to find them. Okay, so to sew the beads in, I am using this tiny-eyed beading needle that will come in your kit. and I have just one strand of 780 threaded through this eye. It can be a little tricky to thread, and definitely just one strand is going to fit through there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to come up through the fabric, and these little dots are just suggestions. You can pick wherever you want to put a scattering of some little sparkle in here, but I'm going to come up right where one of the little dots are. I'm coming up like just to the right of it, and then I will get a bead onto my needle. So I'm just going to angle the needle through the bead and pick it up like so. Whoops, I didn't get one that time. There we go. And then you'll thread it down to the fabric, and then you can just make a down stitch just about at the width of what the bead would be. So I'm just going to go down basically like on the other side of this dot, and that will anchor the bead into place like that. So I'll repeat that right here. Go ahead and get a bead. Slide it down to the fabric, and then make my down stitch just a tiny little stitch length away, which anchors that bead into place. So you'll repeat that for every dot you see or wherever you want to within this area down here. And then we will go up here and we'll add in some of the pretty colorful beads to make it nice and full on top of the cactus. One thing to note here, when you start with the thread, you want to make sure that you tie off your knot quite big in the back, just so that your thread doesn't pull right through the fabric. And when you're done adding these beads, you just tie off a knot like normal, and then we'll move on. All right, moving on, you have a mix of beads that came in the kit. There's like a kind of warm coppery orange color, a light blush pinkish peachy color, and then this bright turquoise. So again, you're going to want to get those into a dish that you have readily available. This time I'm just going to use one strand of the ecru thread since it's a nice light neutral color. And with our beading needle, you're just going to come up, I'm starting over here, and you'll just pick out, there's no rhyme or reason to this, any little combinations of beads that you want to sprinkle in and fill in throughout these florals on top of the cactus here. I just like to choose different color combinations. Sometimes it might be the same, sometimes like the same color twice, sometimes it might be a little different. And you're just gonna sew those on to the pattern. Wherever the two kind of elements sort of meet is a good place to grab a bead and sew it in there. Kind of helps fill in some of that negative space and give this a really full look. So I will show you one thing I do is sometimes I get two beads at once. So I'm coming up through the fabric right here. I'm going to thread two beads onto my needle. So I'll get like a turquoise and a pink here. I'm sliding those down towards the fabric, and then I'm kind of holding the thread up so I can push these down into place. That helps me see where I should make my down stitch. So I can see that these end right about here, and then I'll just go ahead and make a down stitch right there to anchor them into place. I'm going to go ahead and fill in a few more beads right here. Like I might do two pinks in a row. So I don't have this written out like which bead goes where. This is really up to you. And as many or as little beads as you want, you can add. And you'll repeat up here and also on this one. Just filling in wherever I want to add a little more volume. Like so. All right, so I might put a couple more on here and then I will move on. So again, just this is kind of up to you. You get to play around with adding some beads and make it look how you want to look. Add as many or as little as you want. Just make sure you save enough to do all the other parts of the cactus. And then this is our last step, our last stitching step. Then we will talk about how to back the hoop and finish it up.